Hello, greetings and salutations. It's Morning Mac here. It's December 30th, so the work year is over. Finally. It's Friday, and we've got New Year's Eve tomorrow. We have lots of beer, some champagne, some Malibu rum for the lady, and she just went out to get some food for snacks and treats, so we're going to have a New Year's Eve celebration at home, I think, tomorrow with family, basically. It'll be fun when we get there. But the work year's over, so that's good. Don't have to work anymore. It occurred to me through the course of a conversation that there is a subject that I need to elucidate on. And it's the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. And these aren't mine. I didn't invent them. I don't even fully understand them. But I work on it. So we're going to dive into at least the first couple of the Four Noble Truths. The first is that all life is suffering. Oh my God, that sounds so depressing. Everyone spends every moment of life in pure misery. No, it's not true. But being alive, by its very nature, can cause pain and suffering because me, you, everyone I see, everyone you see, every living thing I see, every living thing you see is going to die. And if you're attached to people, if you're attached to things and they die, that causes suffering. And just given the nature of life, the things are going to die and you'll feel that loss. You're going to suffer. And it's not just necessarily things. It can be positions that you're in life. You can have a job and lose that. That could cause you suffering. You could have a car that crashes and gets destroyed. That can cause suffering. You could have a house that burns down. That causes suffering. Because humans like control. They like things to stay the way we like them to be forever, but that just doesn't happen. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but that's the basic premise of all life is suffering. And I don't know if that's depressing or not, but it is what it is. That's the nature of life. You can like it, you can hate it, you can be indifferent, but that's not going to change the fact that all things in this world are transient, up and to and including the world itself, because eventually our sun is going to die and expand and envelop the entire earth and destroy this whole planet. Probably we have a few 100 million years before that happens, but it's going to happen, at least based on all the science I've seen. So even the planet itself is transient. But in our lifetimes, it seems like an immense amount of time, so we don't have to worry about that, I hope. An asteroid could collapse, our civilization if it impacted and caused some kind of new ice age, but let's not worry about that right now. So it's suffering. It's suffering based on attachments because we get attached to things. We get attached to people, each other. We get attached to ourselves. We get attached to our image. And more importantly, we get attached to desires. Like, if I could buy that car, then I would be happy. If I had that house, I would be happy. If I had that job, I would be happy. If I had that amount of money, then I would be happy. And we get attached to these ideas of what would bring us happiness instead of focusing on just living in the moment and being happy in the moment, which can be hard if you're in a burning house or you're crippled because you fell in a ditch. Obviously, it's hard to enjoy that moment, but that gets further into Buddhism, and we're just working on the original all life is suffering, and suffering is basically attached to desires, primarily a desire to control things, to make them how you want them, versus just accepting how they are. And accepting reality is a very important step to actually eliminating, or at least reducing, depression. So what can we say? I was talking about thinking about, let's say, if I had, I'll get it personally, a personal experience. If I had a girlfriend, then I wouldn't have any depression. I wouldn't be sad. Everything would be great. But the problem is when you get that going after this relationship with a woman, you finally get it. It's all going well. Now you have a new problem because you're attached to that relationship. And if she dies, if you die, if it doesn't work out and you break up, that's going to cause a lot of suffering. So maybe don't try, or just accept the fact that by trying, you might lose, you might win, it might work out for a while, eventually it might not. But the thought that it's going to fix the underlying suffering is wrong. Because life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you decide to react to it. I don't know. How deep can I go into Buddhism in 10 or 15 minutes? Not very. But your decision of how to react to things is more important than what actually happens to you, because so much of what happens to you can't control. You can plan, you can try, you can try to control the world, but you're not going to be able to. There's hurricanes, there's earthquakes, there's asteroids that destroy the dinosaurs, there's other people doing things that you don't want them to do. So much of life is out of your control. All you can control is how you react to it. And I think the first noble truth that all life is suffering is acknowledging how little control you as an individual ego have. And it's arising from your desire to control the world when you in fact cannot control anything other than yourself, really. And sometimes controlling yourself is even a trick. So I don't know, is it depressing that all life is suffering? Or is it just the reality of things? If you can accept the reality and deal with the reality in reality's terms, you've taken the first step to ceasing your desires and, becoming free from suffering, which is the path of Buddhism. And there's the Eightfold Path that is supposed to help you get there. I'm not going to dive into that right now because that's like a 6-hour discussion on the Eightfold Path. And, we all have different measures of success, in trying to overcome the suffering of life, because we're all suffering. The guy that cuts you off in line at the grocery store, he's suffering in some way, most likely in some way that didn't allow him to acknowledge you as a person. And how you react to that is up to you, and you can either increase his suffering by engaging in a conflict, or perhaps alleviate your own suffering by not doing so, or by being loving and kind to this person who cut you off in line. Maybe you can alleviate both your suffering. I don't know. It's a very complex subject, and we all have different measures of success. But the important thing is that we acknowledge the reality that all life is suffering. And this shouldn't mean detaching ourselves from the world, because loneliness is a very supreme form of suffering. We have to find a way to engage, attach to people, and accept the fact that all things must pass. It's a George Harrison song. It's very good. The good things pass and the bad things pass. So it's not all bad, it's not all good. And new things come into existence as old things pass away. So, I mean, your parents may die, your grandparents may die, but then you have children and you have grandchildren. So they're not replacing those that you've lost, but they're adding to your life in different ways. And it doesn't alleviate the suffering of losing your elders or your peers as you get older. But maybe it makes you see the overall point of it all or something. I don't know. But I don't know. What do you think? All life is suffering. There's suffering inherent in life because we desire things we can't have. We wish that people and things wouldn't leave our life, and they do. We want things that maybe can't be or maybe can be. But it's very hard being a person sometimes. Life is suffering. It's not depressing. It's just what it is. How we choose to deal with it is the important part. So that's my thoughts for Friday, December 30th. And we're moving on to 2017. I've got a few days off, so I'm going to kick back, relax. I'm drinking these Summit Saga IPA because I couldn't find my Rebels. And I didn't want to buy a bunch of beer because I'm not going to drink beer for probably the first month of 2017, just because I have to really focus and get back on my diet. But we'll see how that's going at that point. Not that it really matters, because we're all going to die. I'll die someday. But I'd like to die with a six-pack, because that really matters. It does. I'm sure it does. Bye.